This happened to me during a work trip last year. I arrived at the hotel and got the key for the room my company had paid for. The hotel looked nice inside, but it was a bit smaller than most, with about 30 to 40 rooms and only 3 floors. My room was on the top floor, so I took the elevator up and walked down the hallway. I put my bags by the door and reached into my pocket for the key. Just then, the door to the room next to mine opened and a man stepped into the hallway. He said hello and told me he was my neighbor. He held out his hand for a handshake. I shook it, feeling a bit confused, and told him my name before going into my room. As I walked in, I saw him go back to his room and close the door. I thought it was weird that someone would come out of their hotel room just to say hi, but I guessed some people are just like that. I unpacked my small suitcase and duffel bag, then lay down on the bed and turned on the TV. It was already late, and I was tired from the flight, so I planned to go to bed early. After a quick shower, I turned off all the lights and tried to sleep for almost 20 minutes. Then, I heard the neighbor's door slowly open. I saw their shadow walk by my door, but they stopped right before passing my room. I could see their shadow getting closer through the small bit of light under the door, but then it backed away and kept going down the hall. This really creeped me out, so I got up and checked that all the locks on the door were secure before going back to bed. The next day, I met my coworkers at a company building for a presentation and dinner. I didn't get back to the hotel until 10 p.m., and I was really tired. I threw my work bag on the bed and then jumped in the shower. I was in the shower for about 10 minutes when I heard the sound of the electronic door lock unlocking. I knew it was too late for the cleaning service, so I instantly thought of the strange man in the room next to mine. But I had no idea how he could have a key card to unlock my door. I didn't know what to do, so I stood there quietly as I heard the door slowly open and then close. Then I heard footsteps walking past the bathroom door. With the shower running, I knew they had to realize I was inside, which scared me even more. I tried to quietly get out of the shower so I wouldn't alert them and put on a pair of pants I had left on the ground. After locking the bathroom door, I leaned my ear against it and listened. I could hear a soft noise, like someone was going through one of my bags. I wanted to confront them, but I thought they might have a gun or a knife. In that moment, I felt helpless and frozen in fear. I had no idea what this guy wanted, but soon the room went silent. Since I didn't have my phone with me, I thought my best chance was to call for help. At least it might scare the guy away. I took a deep breath and started banging on the bathroom door, yelling for help as loudly as I could. I heard the man's hurried footsteps run past the door and back into the hallway. I quickly got out, closed the front door, locked it, and ran to the nightstand to grab my phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. Once they were on their way, I called the front desk to let them know too. By the time the police arrived, the man was already gone, but thankfully they found him in his car a few hours later. I'm not sure if he went to jail for what he did because they couldn't prove he meant to harm me. I honestly think he was trying to kidnap me. I can't think of any other reason he would enter my room knowing I was there. But I guess we'll never know for sure what would have happened. I was a security guard at a big hotel in Las Vegas when I was in my late 20s. It paid more than other jobs I could get. But the worst part was the schedule and the people working there. The hotel didn't have enough staff, so I had to work at different times like morning, evening, or even overnight. It was hard to get good sleep, but I stayed because I liked the money. One night, I was working a late shift and talking with 2 of my coworkers at the front desk. It was around 11 p.m., and my shift ended at midnight, so we were just chatting. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rang. It was a call from one of the hotel rooms. I answered and asked how I could help. A man on the phone said something was happening in a room down the hall, and he sounded worried. I asked him what he meant, and he quickly told me to come up fast because he was really scared. I looked at the room number on the phone and told the caller I would send security right away, but I really meant I was going myself. After I hung up, I quickly told my coworkers about the strange call and went to the elevators. I headed to the floor where the caller's room was. As I walked down the hallway, it was super quiet, which felt a bit creepy. I thought I would hear something, but there were no loud sounds. I also thought the caller might be waiting for me by the door, but the door was closed. I knocked loudly on the door and said I was hotel security. I didn't hear any sounds from inside, and after waiting a minute with no answer, I walked to the end of the hallway to listen for anything strange. When I didn't hear anything, I went back to the door and knocked again. Just then, a door behind me opened, and an older woman asked if I was security. I said yes, and asked if she knew anything about strange noises or the call. She told me she had heard loud noises in the hallway a few minutes ago, but didn't know what they were. She looked and sounded really scared. At this point, I was starting to feel nervous, but things got even stranger. I took out my walkie-talkie and called the front desk, asking them to call the room again and tell me if anyone answered. After a while, they said no one had picked up. I stood there for a moment, wondering what to do, then asked them to check who was staying in the room. It felt like forever, but they finally told me that no one had booked the room that night. Feeling even more confused, I used my security key card to unlock the door, since the room was supposed to be empty. The room looked clean and untouched from what I could see. I checked every corner and didn't find anything strange. Then I went to the phone, turned it over, and wrote down the serial number. After that, I went back to the lobby where my desk was and checked the security records to see if any calls were made from that room. Sure enough, there was a record of a call made from that room to the front desk, the one I had answered about 15 minutes earlier. The hotel didn't record calls, so all I knew was that someone was in that empty room without permission. Things got more serious in the next few days, because the next morning, a guest staying on the same floor was reported missing by a family member in another room. The security cameras were checked, and the missing person was last seen leaving the hotel alone a few hours before I got the call. It's still unclear if the two events are connected, but it's definitely strange. I don't know how the caller got to that phone or who they were, but I personally think the call had to do with someone being kidnapped, based on what they said. The person who made the mysterious call was never found, and the missing person still hasn't been found either. My family took a vacation to a different hotel or resort every summer. It was always me, my wife, and our two little boys. Most of the time, we stayed at the resort instead of going out to see other places. This helped save money since we didn't need to rent a car, and it was nice to relax at a good place and escape from everyday life. When we arrived in the morning, we all unpacked, and the kids wanted to go to the water park right away. My wife and I sat in chairs by the pool while the boys went off to play with other kids at the water park next to the pool. We enjoyed the sun for about 2 hours before we decided to head back to our room to get ready for dinner. I got up and started walking around the water park to look for the boys. After a few minutes, I found Sam, the older one, and asked him where Alan was. I changed their names for privacy reasons. Sam said Alan was playing with another kid on the other side of the park. I told Sam we were leaving and asked him to run back to Mom while I went to find Alan. I searched the area for about 10 minutes and started to get nervous when I finally saw him. He was in the back corner, where a few chairs were set up, talking to a small boy who looked about his age. A couple sitting in the chairs next to them seemed to be the boy's parents. I walked over and quickly introduced myself, but they didn't say much, just gave me a slight smile. There was an awkward silence for a few seconds before I told Alan we were leaving for dinner and led him back to the hotel. I asked him about his new friend, and he said he was just playing with him at the water park, but that was about it. Alan was a pretty talkative kid, so it wasn't unusual when he told me something strange. He said the boy had introduced him to his parents, who then invited him to dinner that night. I thought it was really odd that someone would invite a young boy to dinner without even talking to his parents first. As soon as we got to our room, I told my wife about it, and she was just as worried. We decided to grab a quick dinner and return to the hotel around 5. The kids both seemed pretty tired, so we were ready to relax for the rest of the night. We got in the elevator and went up to our floor, but when the doors opened, I saw Alan's new friend and his mother standing there as if they had been waiting for the elevator to go down. As soon as we got out, the mother smiled at me briefly and asked if Alan could join them for dinner that night. I quickly glanced at my wife, who looked just as confused and worried as I was, then turned back to the lady. "We already had dinner tonight, but maybe we can figure something out for tomorrow," I said. Her smile faded, and she turned and walked down the opposite hallway, probably to their room. I knew both my wife and I felt the same way, that they had been creepily waiting for us by the elevator just to ask about dinner. When we got inside our room, we pulled Alan aside and firmly told him not to go near that family without one of us with him. He looked a bit upset about it, but he agreed. I also took Sam aside separately to make sure he understood the situation and that I wanted him to look after his little brother whenever we weren't around. We all took turns showering and then relaxed on the bed and couch for the rest of the night. I was pretty annoyed at how the vacation was going, already feeling stressed about my child's safety, but I told myself it would be better tomorrow. Eventually, we all got ready for bed and turned off the lights. There were 2 beds in the room, one for my wife and me, and the other for the 2 boys to share. A few hours into the night, I was suddenly shaken awake. I sat up quickly, still feeling tense, and saw Sam next to me, shaking my arm. "You okay, bud?" I asked. Sam whispered that Alan was talking to someone at the door. I instantly jumped out of bed and rushed to the front door. From the quick look I got before yelling at him, I saw that Alan was trying to unlock the door, and I could hear a soft voice on the other side. I ran toward him, shouting for him to back away from the door. Alan jumped back, scared by how loud I was. I slammed against the door just as I heard footsteps running down the hall. I finished unlocking the door and swung it open. I knew I should have stayed in the room and called for help, but in my anger, all I wanted was to confront the creep. In the hallway, I caught a quick glimpse of a man turning the corner down the hall toward the elevators. I tried to catch up, but once I turned the corner, there was no sign of him. He wouldn't have had time to take the elevator, so I knew he was still on our floor. After searching the area for a few minutes, I ran back to our room, where my wife was already awake from all the noise. I told her to lock the door while I went to the front desk to tell them what happened. By the time I got to the lobby, my adrenaline was starting to wear off, and I was trying to calm down to explain what had happened. A young woman was at the counter when I arrived, and I could tell she had never dealt with a situation like this before. She called a security guard over to talk to me, along with her manager. After a few minutes of discussion, it was clear there wasn't much they could do. They didn't have any security cameras in the hallways, only at the entrances and exits. I had no proof or description of the man at the door or his connection to the parents who asked about dinner. I thought he might be the father of the other boy, but even though I felt sure about the creepy parents' intentions, I couldn't prove it. In the end, the best they could offer was a refund for our remaining days, which meant we had to move to a different resort 30 minutes away. As a parent, it's an awful feeling to know there was someone likely trying to kidnap your child, and yet there's nothing anyone can do about it. I hate the thought that those creepy parents could still be out there trying to lure innocent children into some twisted trap. They deserve to be in prison. I hope that by sharing this experience, I can inform other parents about the real dangers out there and help protect their children from these horrible people. What scares me the most is the chance that the boy who was with them could be someone else's missing child, used to lure other innocent kids.